Okay, welcome back, everybody. It's week 2, day 1. We're going to go over DOM manipulation. We just went over the fact that that means editing or changing our HTML document. So we'll be doing that this morning, and then we'll be breaking out into groups to do a project in the afternoon. And then by the end of the day, we want to finish this practice assignment video preview and the assignment button clicker. So we'll go over those during the lesson. The reading is, the homework for reading is changing HTML and CSS, JavaScript objects, query selector, input and change timeout. So we'll go over all these rules during the lecture as well. Okay, so now let's go ahead and get started. Let's do some review. Last Friday, we went over what this is. So what is this? What does that mean when we use the word this?
It isn't that.
It's not that.
A rule that calls to the specific element that it's placed within.
Right? Exactly. Okay, so if I create a button and I say on click, alert, and I pass in this, what am I passing in the alert?
The HTML element?
Yeah. Of what?
Button?
Yes. We're passing in the button in the alert in this case. We're passing in the button. So this is going to refer to whatever it's attached to. This case, it's the button. So good job, guys. We passed that. Let's go ahead and do some other reviews. So we know what the alert does. What does the alert do?
Displays text at the top of the page, like from the URL bar.
Right, like a little pop-up, right? Okay. Yeah. Let's go over a couple more. Where do we attach the script tag on the HTML?
Within the body at the very bottom.
Exactly. Script tag always goes at the bottom of the HTML. Okay. How do I remove an element from a page?
.remove.
Right? Okay. See the example here. If we've created a function and we say on click hide, we call the function hide, and we say element.remove. Element is taking in this, and that will remove the function. Okay. And how do we change the text inside of an element?
The .inner text.
Yes, sir. Element.inner text. So now, whatever we pass in through this, we can take that element and change the inner text. So we can change off and on buttons from on to off and off to on. And do we remember how we did this? How do we change it back from off to on?
Used an if statement to check the current value of the button.
Yes, yes. We used an if statement. And then we also used what else?
An else statement.
Yep, it was in the question. An else statement. We used an else statement if it was otherwise to turn it back to on. Okay, so now we're using if and else statements to manipulate the DOM. All right, so now let's go into today's lesson. we're going to go over the concept of objects. Okay, this is a new JavaScript tool we're going to learn about. All right, so let's do some more review actually here. What's an array?
A non-primitive data type containing a set of values.
Right, so if I say var
Index.
r, right, and we access it by index. So if I say hello is the first value, we can have strings and numbers. We can have multiple values. So if I want to access the word hello, I would say r at 0, right? That's how we did, that's how we access the values for life's answers. We said that number value for wherever we're at in this array is going to equal the answer that we want to output. So in this case, r at 0 would equal hello. Okay. Now we're going to learn about another way to store data in something called objects. Okay. So let's go ahead and do some reading here. Oftentimes, we're dealing with data. It's not enough to just know one property or value. There is instead a lot of related information we're concerned with. If, for instance, we wanted to plan out our perfect taco, we might imagine all the individual ingredients we'd want to add onto it. The tortilla or shell, the protein, maybe cheese, and lots of toppings. We can express all of this separate variables, in JavaScript, okay? So we can create these variables to equal these values. Tortilla, soft corn tortilla, that's a string. And then toppings, we made it an array of lettuce, pico de gallo, and guacamole. All right. This works just fine for one taco. Nah, I'm not going to make that big, am I? But yeah, I will. This works just fine for one taco, but what if we want to make a second taco with different ingredients? Should we start adding numbers to the end of our variables? Something like tortilla 2, protein 2, cheese 2, and toppings 2. Instead, we could create separate tacos and allow them to have properties that can share a common name by using objects. Okay, so let's see what objects do. An object allows us to combine multiple values like an array. Okay, so it's like an array, but unlike how an array uses consecutive numbers for locations, an object allows us to use any word we would like. Okay, so what does that mean? We'll commonly refer to these as key value pairs. We can rewrite our taco like below using a colon to separate the key from the value and using commas to separate each key value pair. Okay, so now it's telling us we can store data in a new way. Instead of storing it like this, where we have variables and we have specific values for those variables, now if we want to reuse these values and create a variable that holds all of them, we're going to create something called an object. Now, an object, as we can see, is defined by the opening and closing curly brackets. And here we have, instead of a variable tortilla equaling soft corn taco, we have something called a key value pair. Okay, so let's go ahead and copy this and explain it. Oops. Go here. So we had our variable taco 1, and we said it's going to start here and end here. Now we have tortilla. And the tortilla's value is going to be soft corn tortilla. So there's different types of tortillas we can have. We can have corn tortillas, we can have flour tortillas, but for this taco, for this specific taco, we want to define what type of tortilla we're going to use. So here's the key. Let me see here. This is the key, and this is the value. All right, so when we want to access the value, we need to find it by its key. It's like when you look up in a dictionary, any word that you're wanting to find the definition of, you find it by the key. So it's that word that you're looking up, for example, apple. The value will be the definition. Okay, so now, if we want to have more than one key value pair in an object, we'll add a comma and add a new key value pair. So they're separated now by commas. So we'll say protein. What type of protein do we want in our soft taco? We'll say carne asada. So this is, again, the key. And this is the value. And again, if I wanted to add another key value pair, I add another comma and I add to this object. So I'm missing the chat here. So it's like a dictionary, yeah. We'll see what, let's use some more analogies here as we go along. Now that we have our taco in an object, we can access the values that are stored using the dot syntax. So before, when we wanted to access a value in an array, we would use the brackets and then the number at the point in the array that it was. If it was 0, that means it was accessing the very beginning of it. If we say array.length -1, then we're accessing the value at the very end of the array. But now, if we want to access values in a object, we are going to say taco1 dot tortilla. So we're going to access this value here now. Soft corn tortilla, we're going to say taco1 dot tortilla. We're saying at this object, taco1. Okay, that's it. Now we see these values, these keys here. One of the keys is tortilla. So if we say taco1.tortilla, if we console log this, what is the value going to be? What is our output? Soft corn tortilla. Exactly. When we enter the key, we get the value. So taco1.protein then is going to equal tinga chicken. I've never heard of tinga chicken before. Sounds I've never heard that type of chicken. Maybe I'm just not cultured here. Been eating tacos my whole life, but never had tinga chicken. Anyways. All right, as delicious as it would be, there are no languages that have a built-in property called .cheese and the objects that are made using it. It turns out that all of our properties can be accessed this way, which will make it easy for us to remember how to get them. If we use really genetic keys like X, Y, and Z, we could still access the information, but it would be hard for us to know unless it's a three-dimensional point, perhaps. Okay, so this is unnecessary. We can call the keys anything we'd like, but in this case, we want to call it something descriptive. All right, so this is our keys. This is our value. Our object holds all of our keys. So it's like a dictionary. Okay, so methods, giving actions to objects. Okay, so now that we know what an object looks like and how to access the values by the keys, now we can do a bit more. Objects are great at storing information in a logical way, but objects can provide even more than that. Our objects are also able to contain actions they can do. It's hard to imagine our tacos as doing much beyond being highly delectable, but we can take the console log lines from above to make some functionality. Okay, so now we have an object. It has key value pairs. In this key, we have a value which is an array. And in this key, we have a value that's a function that console logs all of these other key values. So now if we say taco1.tacoInfo, which is this key here, we're going to return a value, which is a function which console logs the tortilla, protein, cheese, and toppings, which are defined here. So these are just strings. You don't have to have them there, but these are just give some context to our console log. And now we have taco1.tortilla. So let's see this in action. I'm pulling up a Visual Studio here so I can copy everything here. Okay, 1 second here, bear with me. All right, 1 second. Okay, I've got it. So now let's paste this in here and just run this. Now our result here is tortilla, soft corn tortilla, protein, tinga chicken, cheese, cotija chicken, and toppings, lettuce, pico de gallo, and guacamole. This is all from saying taco1.tacoInfo, which is this key here, which is going to give me this value. All right, so let's say we want to say taco1.toppings. Let's console log this.
You have to take the function parentheses out because that one's not a function.
Exactly. Oh, I didn't console log it. when we console log taco1.toppings, we get back the array, which is the value of the key toppings. But we can also, as we just seen, make it a function call itself, because taco info, oh, did I do that right? No, taco info is itself going to be a function. So we invoke this as we would a function. Taco1.tacoInfo. This is the function call. Let's run it again just to see here. And then we get all the values that we console log. Tortilla, soft corn tortilla, protein, tinga chicken, cheese, cojita cheese, and toppings, lettuce, pico de gallo, and guacamole.
For a function stored within an object like that, would you ever name the function or pass something into that function?
We might, depending on what we may need to use it for. Yeah, we could. Yeah, it's definitely possible.
If you named it, how would you still call it from taco info function? Like if you named it, if it was
Yes.
taco info function get taco info, it would still be called the same way?
No, then you'd have to change it here. Get taco info.
I mean like on the right side of the colon, would you ever name the function there as we've been naming them previously, like function space, function name, parentheses?
No, now the name of the function is here in this key.
Okay.
Yep, good question. So, great. I haven't had that much good Mexican food here while in Texas, and I'm sorry to dog on Texas here, but I've had better Mexican food in California. Anyways, that doesn't matter.
Oh, yes, it does.
It doesn't matter to this lecture here. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, more specifically. There you go. Be specific now.
It can't be helped. We'll have to use this. Okay, now we're going to use the keyword this here. Just like in your favorite anime. Okay, let's not get in that topic. When the protagonist must use some secret weapon, usually that, to save the day, JavaScript objects can save us from having to retype the same variable names many times. The special keyword that will let us do this is actually called this. Using this, we can rewrite the code above like so. Okay, so we have our taco1, we have the key value pairs, we have the taco equaling a function, and now we can get all the delicious taco facts by taco1.tacoInfo. Wait a minute.
It's the same thing except when you're console logging, instead of writing taco1 every time you're using this.
Right, but it didn't give this example there. It didn't say
Oh,
that.
you can use this there as well.
Well, I'm trying to see here the difference between this line of code.
Within the function, the console logs are tortilla plus this
Oh,
tortilla.
there it is. This.
Yeah. And does that only work because that's within the declared variable? Like
yes.
the other question I asked, you couldn't do this dot taco info because it's outside of that object.
So let's give that a test. I need to show you guys here. I missed that small detail with this being there. So let's comment this out. Let's paste this here. And let's log this to make sure that it's working. So you have the same results. So now you want to use this outside of this function.
Yeah, like if you were calling the function with this dot taco info.
So this dot taco info. I don't think that's gonna work, but
Right, because it's outside of the object itself.
yes, it has to be within context. It knows what this is because it's in the object. This dot tortilla. Right. Good question. I never thought of asking that, but good question, Mike. Okay, so this is just another way you can use this. It's going to refer to the key value pair in the object that it lives in. Okay, let's continue. This will be important, understanding how this works later on in JavaScript. For now, we're only introducing this in the concept of objects. So keep this in mind when you see it later on being used in applications. You'll remember, okay, oh, it's referring to whatever context that the keyword this is referring to. Okay, so now we have this practice assignment today, Dojo Pizzeria, where we have an object of bread, sourdough, protein. We have different proteins. And then we have a function here that accesses this object. So we say now in this function, in the sandwich factory function, we're going to take in the bread, the protein, the cheese, and the toppings. So all these ingredients. And then we're going to say sandwich.bread equals bread. Because now we're defining a new sandwich in here. And so now when we say var s1 equals sandwich factory, give me wheat, turkey, provolone, mustard, fried onions, and arugula, and we console log s1, let's see what we get here.
Can I ask real quick why in the one you're hovered over right now, you're using the code brackets for var sandwich?
These brackets over mustard, fried, and onions, and
No,
arugula?
just below the function, when you define the variable sandwich, you're defining it as open and close code brackets.
I'm missing. Let me copy it over to
Line 2.
here.
Yes.
So this var sandwich is equaling a new empty object. Let's pull this into Visual Studio Code so that I can give you a better example here. So let's comment this out. Let's take our sandwich. Let's take our function. And at this point, let's console.log sandwich on line 47. So now I'll run this. var1 is equal to the function invocation, and we're giving these values here. And I want to console log this function call. So on line 47, we are logging an empty object. Okay. Now let's take this same line and console log it after we've said the bread equals bread. Now we can see here, bread is wheat. And that's because we've added wheat to our sandwich factory. So our sandwich factory is creating a new sandwich. Okay, this sandwich here is irrelevant. In our sandwich factory, we start with an empty sandwich blank. So it's just a template. And as we give definitions to what bread, what turkey, what cheese, and what toppings we'd like, we are now creating our sandwich, which is at first an empty object. As we define what sandwich bread is going to equal, and remember, we're creating, at this point, we're creating key value pairs for this object we've created. That makes sense, Mike?
Yeah. My specific question originally was just asking, or what Tina and Spencer said in the chat was that the open code or squiggly brackets denotes an object,
Right.
a
Okay.
new object. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Great. So yes, this is an empty object, and then we are giving values, key values to this object. So sandwich.bread, instead of giving it a hard-coded value like we would like this, wheat, inside here, we are letting line 51 to input values whatever we like. So now we can create multiple sandwiches in our sandwich factory by just creating a new variable below. So we can reuse this function to create as many sandwiches as we'd like. So now we can say var s2 equals, I'm going to call the sandwich factory, and I'm going to say what's a bread? Not wheat, because we already used wheat.
Ciabatta.
Something I can spell. Okay.
Ciabatta.
What about panini?
That's close. That's close. Just close enough.
Okay.
Ciabatta.
Ciabatta bread. That's how we say it in Boston. Okay. Ham.
So what would happen if you switched down there the protein and the cheese? So let's say where ham is, you put the cheese, and then after cheese, ham. Like you put
Okay, it would just give the value of the protein a cheese. It's not going to check here. There's no checker that will, our function's not that complex. It's going to say, if the value of the protein is equal to anything other than this protein, then don't make it equal that. It's just going to give whatever value we give in the order that we're giving it in here.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for. So it has to be the same order, more or less.
Right. You can put some if statements in here that say if
That's really hard to check with that.
Yeah, you can write an if statement saying, okay, if the value is not ham or turkey or something, then don't give sandwich.protein this protein value that we've just put in. But for now, it's just going to enter it in the order that we want to submit it in. What did you say there, Tina?
I said it's really hard to check with like all the variables you could put for protein.
Right. You can say if it's not these specific values that I'm going to only limit it to, then don't assign it to protein. But we'll make a new sandwich still. Okay, what type of cheese? We'll say cheddar. Not that good of a sandwich. I used to be a deli worker. And there was a rule at the grocery store I worked at that if I didn't make the sandwich in 5 minutes, it was free. And so sometimes customers would go in there and pull out a timer, and I had to work fast. then they would customize the sandwich, take a long time to make up their mind, and try to, swindle a sandwich out of me. What's another ingredient here? Pepper. Okay, so now let's console log sandwich 2.
Papa.
Papar.
Papa.
That's how we say it in England. A pepper. All right, here, now we have our sandwich 2. So we're taking these ingredients, we're putting it into these values, we're creating a new object, and we're saying this object's bread is going to be the bread that we pass in from this function call. Ciabatta, ham, cheddar, mayo, onions, and pepper. Now I'm losing my appetite because it doesn't sound that good. But if you're hungry, anything sounds good. So let's continue working, and then we'll get hungry as we work. Okay, now you guys have the idea of how to do this one here. It's telling you how to, they want you to create all these sandwiches. And then now the bonus challenge is to create a function that will randomize the pizza that we'd like. Okay, I'll let you guys figure that one out. Now we have a query selector. Oh, let's do a status check, actually. How well do we think we're understanding objects at this point? Good. We need to practice, yeah. Okay. How do we access an object's value? Okay.
With
Name
dot.
that. Yeah, with the dot notation. How do we create a new object? Right. Open and close curly bracket. Okay. And we just seen a function on how to add to an object. So I highly recommend you guys do this practice assignment, Doja Pizzeria. As you work on it, as you read through whatever you're entering, you're going to get a good understanding. So this is a sandwich factory. Now make the same function using pizza ingredients. Doja Pizzeria. When I first started learning objects, it didn't click right away. It was really hard to piece together. So don't worry if you're not understanding it the first time you read it. Can an object's value be an object? Yeah, you can have objects within objects within objects. You can have objects within, you can have arrays within objects and objects within that array. So there's lots of nested things you can have there. Objects and arrays, arrays and objects, objects and objects. It can go deep. Okay, so now let's move back to manipulating the DOM. And what we're going to do here is access some H1s that we have by using a query selector. So before, when we wanted to access something, we would use this. Now we are going to use query selectors. And we're going to grab elements on our page by IDs in this case. All right, so let's go ahead and do that now. I'm going to pull up Visual Studio again. I'm going to create a new folder here saying, call it example. and script.js. Okay, I'm going to give a script src script.js. Oops. And I'm going to create an h1 here. And I'm going to say hello. Hello is the name of the ID because in my h1, I'm going to say hello world. And then in the script tag here, I'm going to console log here just to make sure I'm connected. So now if I run this and I inspect, I get this console here. So I have my document hello world. I have console logged that I'm here because that's how I know I'm connected through this script tag. Okay, now let's go ahead and go with the example that we've given. So we've created our template. And so in this example, they are going to access the title, the ID title, by the document query selector. And in this case, they're saying document query selector, grab it by the title. They're doing this in two different ways. We're just going to do this by the ID in our case. So in our case here, I'm going to do exactly what the platform requires, except I'm going to change my variables. I'm going to say var h1 document query selector hello, because this is the ID I've given here. Okay. Oop, did I just do something there? Yes. Okay, so let me I pressed the wrong button there. Let me annotate. I'm grabbing this ID by using this document. So this is the whole document, the object, document object model. So I'm saying in this whole document, query selector. So I'm going to query this document and select something by its ID, hashtag hello. So now I've got it. So now if I want to console log it, I can. So I can say console.log this h1, this variable called h1. All right, now that I've saved it, let's go ahead and see here in the console. Now I have this h1 I've created in my console. And I've accessed it not through this, but through the document query selector.
So it's essentially doing the same thing as this. It just doesn't have to be within the object itself.
Exactly. So let's create a div now. Let's do another example. I'm going to create a div. I'm going to call it I'm going to call it box. Now in my box, I'm going to have a button. And this button is going to say click me. And I'm going to say on click, I want on this click to invoke a function that says delete box. Now I'm going to create a function on my right side here and say function delete box. And I'm going to say var box equals document.query selector. And I'm going to grab it by the hashtag box. I'm grabbing this ID. Oh my gosh. Let's make it a box. I'm grabbing this ID here by this document query selector box. So now on this button click, I'm going to access this box and I want to do something with it. I want to remove. So how do I remove again?
Box.remove.
Yes. Box.remove. So now let's go ahead and try this. And actually, let's give some dimensions to our box. I'm going to add some CSS. So in this example, I'm going to say style.css. I'm going to link the CSS here. Link CSS. And I'm going to say hashtag box. I wanted to give it a height of 500 pixels by and a width of 500 pixels or 400 pixels is fine. And background color. Okay, so now we have this box here. We have a button inside the box. And what happens when I click? It didn't do it. Let's see what we're going to inspect here to see what I did wrong. Box.remove. Let's console log here. This is what the console is for. So if we console.log box, oh, I probably didn't create my function correctly here. On click equals, there we go. Forgot the equal sign. So now it will remove it and it will console log it. So we have our box here. Before we would pass this to delete the whatever this passed through, and when we use this, we would pass in the button itself. So we would only delete the button. But now when we want to delete this whole entire box, we just have to say document.query selector and grab it by its ID, hashtag box. We've grabbed this box here. So on click equals delete box, calls this function. It creates a variable that says this variable is this whole entire box. We've console logged it to make sure that we have it. And then we say box.removed. And that's the result. So imagine this as a pop-up window somewhere on your screen. If we made this nicer, we add the box to the middle, say, thank you for visiting our site. Please subscribe, enter your email here to subscribe. You can make a close button. You can make it just a simple X on the top right here. And now you can remove elements from your page.
If you had something like that on a website, and you wanted the page to then shift around the empty space that the box created, would you use like a position relative for that, so that once it's gone, everything would shift into the place of it, or will it do that automatically?
I would most likely, I think I understand your question. I would most likely use position fixed for this box, add it to wherever on the screen I'd like to see it. And that way it would be on top of the rest of the page's content if you wanted to make it like a pop-up. And,
Okay.
and as soon as you close it, you'd be able to see the rest of the page that it's overlapping.
Thank you.
So I want us to give a pulse check on how well we're understanding document.querySelector. How we can grab something on our page, not just by this, the keyword this anymore, but by this hashtag box. Grab something by an ID.
And it doesn't have to be an ID. You would just, if you want it to be one singular thing, you would use an ID so that it's more specific than like a class of objects.
Exactly.
But
So
you can still call it by class if you want to remove multiple things, let's say.
right. So this will grab this specific ID on this page, ID box.
Yeah, I'm more mean like if you did div class box and then document.querySelector.box, or does query selector only pull by IDs?
No. Look here. We can grab by
by tag.
Yeah, by tag. So let's do this now. Now I'm going to use the query selector. I'm going to comment this out. I'm going to call this box. And I'm going to say, grab it by div. Anything that's a div on my page, I want it to delete. And let's create another div on our page here. And I'll give this one an ID of box 2. And here in the CSS, I'll say box 2, and I'll just give it a different color. I'll make this a red box. So now we have 2 boxes. If I click this button, what should happen?
Gets rid of both boxes and everything within them.
Well, it did delete that one button. Maybe I didn't save it. Oh, I said box.remove. So I want to
div.remove, right?
No, well, I called it box, and I've said query select all the things that are divs. So let me inspect the console here. Whenever something's not working, always inspect the console. And I'm going to delete the console logs I have here so far. Console log here, okay. And I've said H1, okay, that's fine. I've given this ID box. I don't think it shouldn't delete it if I create the same ID here, but let me just test it.
I think it's because box is a list of elements now. Instead of just a single element, so you'd have to like iterate through your list and remove each one or something.
Say that again, Joseph.
I think that when you do the query selector and it returns more than one element, well, now that variable is an array of elements instead of just a single element. So you need to iterate through that array or something and return and remove each one.
If you do query selector, it does the first one. You need to do query selector all.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Query selector all. Exactly.
And now you have an array, so you need to loop through them.
That makes sense.
And now I can change this back to box 2. Thank you, Tina. Yep, I forgot about that rule here. Oh, but it's not accessing all the boxes. So what's going on here?
Well, now it's not accessing, because when you do the other selector, you just grab the first one. So then you remove the first one, but then that new selector returns an array of all of the elements. So now you'll have to iterate through that array to remove.
Yeah, box is now an array.
Yeah.
So
I
you
can't
need to do for each.
Or just say like
oh,
one or box index of 2 or whatever, you know.
okay. I don't want to do that.
Yeah, that was more complicated than I was asking specifically.
Yeah, I don't want to introduce more rules that will confuse those learning for the first time. Let's just stick with the basics here. If I want to remove something, I'm going to access it by the ID that I'm assigning here. Okay, so ID equals box. I've said document query selector, grab it by this hashtag box. We know we can grab it, an ID by the hashtag, and I've said box.remove. Okay, that's how I remove this. And it's gone. Okay. So let's move on here. We can also combine selectors that we've seen before. If, for instance, we had an image inside of an element with the class nav, we could write code that looks like the following. We create this class nav, and inside the query selector, we say .nav image. So this is the image inside the nav. Okay, we can grab things inside, or we can give this image its own ID, maybe a ID or class, and then we just target it by that class, that specific ID or class. Okay. We can also change the CSS by JavaScript as well. So in this case, we have an H3. We can document query selector by that H3, the first H3 that appears on our page, and then we say h3.innerText new title. We know what inner text does. It's going to change the inner text. And so we can change this, for example. So let's copy this onto our page. H3 lorem ipsum. We can say on this H3, we'll say, oops, on click equals change me. And below here, we'll say function change me. And then we'll add this function call. We don't have to pass this anymore. We just have to now call the function Come on, highlight for me. And now we can say H3 equals document query selector, grab the H3 on our page and change the inner text from lorem ipsum to new title. As you can see there, I'm clicking the H3 and we're saying H3.innerText equals new title. Okay, let's give a 1 through 10 pulse check on how well we're understanding this. Inner text. See how we're doing on time. We're going a little bit over on time today. Okay. Not only can we change the inner text, we can change the background color. So let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to add a button to our page. It's going to grab it by this. You know how this works. And we're going to change the background color. So now we have a function that's called setActive. It's going to take in this through this element, and then we're going to change the background color from one thing to another here. Let me shorten my page. So here's my button, and now I can switch it from light to dark. So imagine if I had my whole background to be white and I wanted to switch it to be black, how would I do that now using this button?
Instead of targeting it as this, you would target a container of your whole page or just the body, I guess.
Okay. Okay, so then we would use the query selector to change the background color, right? We would say var body equals document dot query selector add the body in there and say body dot style dot color equals hashtag FFF.
Oh, wouldn't that be background color? Because that would change the text color, right?
So I'm trying to access the body.
I mean, in your style dot color, that would.
Your line 30, the background color instead of color.
Oh yes, background color. Something's wrong here.
It should be one word.
Color is capitalized.
Yeah. Plus, minus, like, should be one word with
There's no
capital C.
hyphenation.
Yeah.
In capital C.
Is that true? 1 points to you
There's
guys.
never hyphenation in CS.
I think you selected the white text as FFFFF, so it would be the 22222.
000 for dark.
Okay. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There we go. Good job, guys. So I assumed it was the same as the CSS there. So there's a slight difference in rules here. Body.style.background color equals this. So here's how to change from light mode to dark mode. And if we use an if statement and an else statement, we can change it back from dark to light. Okay, we won't go into that. That's not necessary for any of our assignments. And this is what this is going over. This is the if statement. So I could take this in, but this is not necessary to any of the assignments. Don't want to overwhelm you guys here, but test this on your own. Create this button, switch it from dark to light, and then using what we've done in this lecture, you can change the whole entire body's color from dark to light. Okay, now let's go over some assignment details here. We're going to go over this likes section. Anytime we click this button, now we're going to want to increase the likes by 1. So this one says 3 likes. When we click it, it should say 4 likes. So what is some tools that we're going to need here in JavaScript in order to make this work?
A function that on click adds +1 to the integer within the concatenated string of integer plus likes.
Right. Okay. And anything else that we can do? We're accessing this value here, 3, or we can create a variable and just have it start at 3 and just make, anytime we click it, the inner text to equal that variable increase. Okay, I can do a workshop on this later in the afternoon, so that's what I'll do. I'll save that. I'll do a little bit of this in the afternoon. We have already gone over the hover event, on mouse over, on mouse out. No, I'm clicking the wrong order here. Likes, making connections. On this assignment, this is already the profile page you guys have created. When you click edit profile, it should change the name now from Jane Doe to any other name. Clicking either button will remove the user from the request list. So if you click accept or reject, it should now remove the whole row. We can access this by the document query selector, or we can pass in this. But in this case, if we pass in this, it will be just the button. So we want to use the document query selector here. And then there's a couple bonus things you can do here. Either button decreases connection request number, and the accept button also increases the your connections number. So not only will it remove this, it will increase your connections and decrease the connection requests. So no, we're not storing data. We're just accessing everything here by the document query selector. We're removing by the document query selector. We're changing values by the document query selector. Again, I'll go over this in detail if we need to do a demo in the afternoon. Or in fact, we can do something after this lecture, but I want to make sure you guys that are working on this, that need a demo, have caught up with your CSS. Okay, let's go over a couple more things here. On change and on input. So here we have a selection of options, and on the change of this option of tacos, pasta, and sushi, we're going to alert. So on change, choose lunch, this, we're going to pass in this, and then we're going to alert the element that we picked. So let's go ahead and do a demo of this. I'm going to add this to the top of our page. I'm going to add this to the bottom of our page here. So this is going to give us a pop-up of the element that we've chosen. So we're saying passing in this of whatever we've selected, and then we're going to alert, you've picked element.value. So now let's see this in action. I would like to eat, and now I get a pop-up, you picked pasta. I'd like to eat sushi. Okay, you pick sushi now. All it's doing is creating an alert, passing in this, and showing the value in the alert. Okay, let's give a pulse check on how well we're understanding this concept here. Grabbing an element's value that we use in a dropdown. This may be on your test. So if ever you forget how to do this, you just need to know where to access it on the platform. Here it is on the input and change. Okay, now lastly, we're going to be going over, well, they're second to last actually. I'm going to go over here. We can also react to a user typing into a text element. In the following example, when the text inputs are changed, the card text will change to match. So here we have a card, we have a P tag, we have a H3, and the input is going to be a text input. The value is going to be example. And on input, set name to this. Now, set name is a function call that we've created here. And it's going to take in this. It's going to console log that element value. And then it's going to say name tag dot inner text, the name tag of this div card that we've created above. We're changing now by the ID here, name tag. Dot inner text is going to equal the value of what we put inside the text input. So let's do a demo of this. Copy this here. Copy this in our JavaScript. Where's my div? Hello, my name is. I need to erase this here. Oh, there's my div. Okay. So now I want to type in Josh. Now I can change some text on my page by whatever I put on this input. Do you see how we've done this? We have a card. That's what we're changing. We have a P tag. We have an H3. We have an ID in the H3. We've called it name tag. Okay, and every time we've changed something on this input, we say on input, set name this. This calls this function, takes in this, whatever I'm typing in, and it's saying now name tag dot inner text. What is name tag? Name tag is grabbing this tag here by the query selector. It's grabbing the ID. It's grabbing this ID and it's saying here, name tag, this variable dot inner text is going to equal the value of whatever I'm submitting here in this input. Okay. All right, let's give a pulse check on this one here, how well we're understanding this input. Once you guys understand how to do this concept, this JavaScript manipulation, you're set for the test. Okay. So grasping this is going to be the last key of the puzzle, last piece of the puzzle.
I think the thing that's most confusing about it is just the the different naming conventions and syntax than what we're used to, and having multiple parts of a page that call to different parts of a page. This one's less readable than others have been in the past because they only refer to themselves, whereas this is making a new thing and referring to something else and then executing something.
Right.
I think it's just practice we need.
Yes. So I'll be done with this lecture pretty soon. I just want to emphasize here, we're creating an ID. We're creating a variable, accessing the document by that ID. And in the function call, we're taking whatever we type in here and we're saying now, change this ID here. By this ID, we're going to grab this variable, change the inner text to whatever we enter in the value of this that we're entering in the input.
That
Yeah.
element there isn't like a built-in syntax. That's just a placeholder that we're using within
Right.
the function. Yes.
Yes.
So that can be anything.
It could be
Okay.
any word.
Okay.
You can just say word dot it'll be the same. It'll work just the same here. So it's just a placeholder. Okay. Good questions. Now, lastly here, and I'll leave you guys alone. We have the set timeout. So what this does is delay something based on a number of milliseconds we give it. So in this case here, we have a function. We want to console log this delayed message. And then we're going to set timeout here. We're just going to, it's going to call function here. It's going to call message after 3 seconds. So let's see this in the console. We have a function called message. It's just going to console log delayed message. Then we're going to console log start. And then we're going to say set timeout. That means just do this after this amount of time, 3,000 milliseconds. Call this function message, which is going to say delayed message after 3 seconds. So it's going to do this after 3 seconds. So it's going to move on to the next line, end, and then say delayed message because it's going to wait 3 seconds to do this function call. Okay, so let's go ahead and see this here. Inspect our console. Start, end, 3 more seconds, and delayed message. So it reads this line. Okay, function, I understand what this call does. All right. Now you want me to console log start? Okay, I'll do that. It does that immediately. And then it reads here, set timeout. Okay, you want me to run this function call after 3 seconds. All right, I'll start that now. Wait 3 seconds. And then it moves on to the next line, console log end. 3 seconds have passed by this time, and now it console logs delayed message. So what if I increase this to 5? It'll just do it after 5 seconds now. 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There. Okay, let's get some feedback on this set timeout.
Within set timeout, why does the message function not need the parentheses next to it? Why can we just call it message instead of message parentheses?
Because this set timeout knows that anything that's calling right here is going to be a function.
Okay.
See, it has that red. It doesn't really like it. But let's see if it works anyway. No, it doesn't like it. See, it knows that anything called when in here is going to be a function. And that it's supposed to call it after this many milliseconds. So 5,000 would be 5 seconds. Okay, we've thrown a lot of information at you guys. And so I'm seeing pretty good numbers for the amount of information we're giving you. Don't worry if it's not all sticking at once. Once you get to doing what I'm doing, and I'll post all this code on GitHub. But what I want you guys to do is create an HTML page, create a JavaScript file, and then just copy these functions over just like I've done here. For hover event, create this div, create a CSS, put the block in the CSS, hover over it, hover out of it, see how this works. Okay, and even if you don't memorize how to do this exactly, you know where in the platform it is, you know you've made it work before. So if you're asked to do this on a test or in an assignment, you know exactly that you've done it before and how, and you can save it to work that you've made. Okay, then you can move on to query selector. When you read through these, treat them as assignments. Create an HTML file, create an H1 in it, then create a JavaScript file, copy this in the JavaScript file, and see how you can change the HTML on your page using JavaScript. Plenty of examples here. All I've done in this whole class was copy HTML and then copy over the JavaScript. I've done some extra stuff like change the background color where I struggled a little bit, but that's not going to be necessary on any of the tests. I'm just trying to show you some extra features. So when you see me struggle with something, don't worry about doing it yourself. All you have to do for anything that you're asked to do in this course is things that you already see defined here. Okay, switch an image. The way you switch an image is by creating an ID, you create a variable equaling document query selector, targeting that ID, and then the function here is just going to say pet image.src is now going to equal this new image. You access this image in your file, and the alt is now going to equal dog image. So have some practice with this. Okay, so this is, like I said, the last piece of the puzzle. Tomorrow, we're going to be going over the exam. We're going to be doing some review. But once you understand this day's concepts, how to manipulate the DOM using JavaScript, you're set for the test. Okay, if you can build a page using HTML and CSS, you can and if you can manipulate it using JavaScript, manipulate the DOM using JavaScript, you're set. You're golden. Okay, so don't worry about memorizing everything at once. Copy it over, have some testing with it yourself. Okay, You're now a computer scientist, so you're going to have to test something scientifically, copy it over, see how it works, and know where you can access it. And that's it. So do we have any specific questions? I know we had a long lecture today. Reading the comments here. No questions. Okay, so all right, I'll let you guys see your assignments, and you have a great day. I'll see you again at 2 Mountain Time.
Thanks, Josh.
Mm-hmm.